Okay, let's get back into it. So we're on Masechet Beitzah Daf Yud Alef Amud Alef. We got up to the Mishnah yesterday. So let's start from the Mishnah. We're about halfway down the Amud. Yud Alef Amud Alef. We're continuing again with these machlokot between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel relating to primarily Simchat Yom Tov. So Beit Shammai Amrim Ein Notlin et ha'eli lekatzev alav basar. Beit Hillel matilin. Okay, we have this Eli. Again, we've seen all of these before, but here we see it in the Mishnah. This Eli, which is this board, which seems to be, I don't know exactly what it looks like, but it's some wooden board or so, which is used for crushing wheat. So crushing wheat would not be, that would not be permitted on Yom Tov, even though you say it's for food. When it comes to the melachot of ochel nefesh, so we have to know there is a distinction between those melachot of ochel nefesh, of food preparation, which are permitted on Yom Tov, and there are melachot of food preparation, which are still forbidden on Yom Tov. So different opinions in the Rishonim as to what it is and why it is. One of the distinctions, I don't remember now, I think it's the Ramban who says this, but I may be mistaken, is that there's a difference between those melachot which are done in the bayit and those melachot which are done in the sadeh. Any type of food preparation which is intrinsically done in one's home is one much closer to the process, much more closer to the immediate preparation of food, that those melachot are permitted. So cooking and baking, which are really the same melacha, and kneading and other things as well. Anything from kneading and onwards in the melachot of Sidur Depat. The melachot which come earlier on, right, planting and plowing and reaping, etc., those are still forbidden on Yom Tov. You might say, planting, that's part of ochel nefesh. No, okay, that's not. We don't allow that. And tochen, which is grinding or crushing, generally speaking, that's not going to be allowed either. So crushing wheat, that even on Yom Tov, that's still going to be forbidden. Now the question is, if you want to use this board, not to crush wheat, but to cut up meat, to use it as a chopping board to cut up the meat. That is the discussion at hand. So Beit Shammai Amrim Ein Notlin et ha'eli lekatzev alav basar. Beit Shammai say no, it's still forbidden. You cannot carry this eli in order to chop up meat on it. Beit Hillel matiren, but Beit Hillel would permit it. So Rashi tells us. Rashi says on the Mishnah Eli, he says melachto leisur. This is a klisha melachto leisur. It is used for a forbidden purpose. Why? That you would use it to crush up the wheat. Mishumachi asile Beit Shammai, and that is why Beit Shammai say that it's forbidden. So Beit Hillel will say, well, if we're dealing with a klisha melachto leisur, as we know, we've said many times that the most common, maybe most well-known category of muktzeh is klisha melachto leisur, which is not actually muktzeh. Muktzeh means that it's set aside. It's not a kli, or it has no purpose, it can't be used on Shabbat or Yom Tov. A klisha melachto leisur, so discussion in the Gemara on Shabbat. But we hold that letzorech gufo or letzorech mekomo, you are allowed to move it in order to use it for, if you need its location, or you want to use that object like gufo, but use it for a permitted purpose. So Beit Hillel says over here, we're dealing with a case of although it's a klisha melachto leisur, you want to use it for a letzorech gufo, for a permitted purpose, and therefore you're allowed to. Beit Shammai says no, you still can't move it. Now Tosfot Aviyah says ein notlin ha'eli. He says v'teima ha tzarich legufa v'kol klisha tzarich legufo lemukomo afilu melachto leisur notlin oto b'yom tov. In other words, Tosfot says, I don't understand. If it's correct that this is a klisha melachto leisur, and you want to use it letzorech gufo, which we just said is permitted, that's permitted. That should be fine according to everybody. That should be, Beit Shammai should agree with that as well. So what's the issue? Why is so Tosfot rejected? It says no. If it was just a klisha melachto leisur, then there'd be no machloket, and then everybody would say you could move it. Elamai, he says yesh lomar tebepelek kol hakelim b'muktzeh sheyesh lo chisron kis tekule alma modu de'asur. Okay, so we have a more stringent category of muktzeh, which is muktzeh mechamat chisron kis. Chisron kis means literally you're going to lose money. So when we have an object, it's quite difficult to find nowadays. Most things are not as most of the objects that we generally use don't fall into this category. But muktzeh mechamat chisron kis means something that is very, very valuable. And you wouldn't just move it around. You wouldn't just play with it because you're worried that it would get damaged or would get broken, etc. So therefore, it's much more guarded. So that is muktzeh mechamat chisron kis. that is going to be more than a wallet. Maybe might be muktzah mechmot chesron kis. The poskim discuss. What about a cell phone? Cell phone certainly muktzah. What category would it fit into? So once upon a time, when cell phones were very expensive and very valuable, and maybe people might be more hesitant about carrying them around, etc. So then it might have been muktzah mechamot chesron kis. Nowadays, most cell phones will probably be a kli shemelachto lesor, right? The things you can't use it for, you can't operate it on Shabbat or Yom Tov. Discussion in the poskim whether that's an isur d'oraita or isur d'rabanan. But to say it's mixed in mechmot chesron kis, no, people carry the phone around all the time and they take it out and they drop it and the kids play with it or whatever. So it probably wouldn't be in most cases, unless you have a very valuable phone and you say your kids, you can't touch this, right? That might be muktzah mechmot chesron kis. The example the Gemara gives is the knife that's used for shechita. That there's a knife and it's a very, very valuable, very expensive, so you wouldn't just take it out. So that is going to be a more stringent category of muktzah, and there we're going to be muktzah machmot chesron kis. You can't just move around the tzorach gufo the tzorach makom. So therefore, says Tosfot, is mukminan le b'muktzah sheyesh bo chesron kis. To kule alma modedu asur. Everybody agrees that would be forbidden. Kagon sichei zilei mezoi de kapid alai. All these things which you are very makpid on. So now the question is the opposite. Okay. Well, if it's muktzah mechamot chesron kis, why do Beit Hillel allow it? So he says, Beit Hillel shematilin ainu dafka mishum simchat yom tov kinenfarsh bigman. As the Gemara is going to explain again, this is a special leniency that Beit Hillel give us for simchat yom tov, in order that you're not going to avoid shechting the animal, or cutting the meat, or you're not going to lose out on your simchat yom tov. We waive the rabbinic prohibition, so to speak. Now, there are those mufarshim who explain that there are actually three categories here. That there's a kli shemelachto leisur, there's muktzah mechamot chesron kis, and then maybe, because at the end of the day, we're talking about whether you can move the object or not necessarily whether you can use it. That's what muktzah is. So it might be that here it's a kli, maybe something in between Rashi and Tosfot, that real muktzah mechamot chesron kis would be something that you can't move, but it's not really a kli. It's not really a tool that you can use for something. Here it is a kli. It's also mechamot chesron kis, so it might be something in the middle. That's how some of the achronim learn over here. Okay, so that is the first case in our Mishnah, as we saw, Machlokes Rashi and Tosfot, how to understand what the muktzah is. But bottom line is, according to Beit Shammai, you cannot move this eli to chop meat on it. They're still machmir. Beit Hillel are maker because of simchat yom tov. Okay, second case in the Mishnah. Beit Shammai אומרים אין נותנים את העול לפני הדורסן ולא יגביהנה אלא אם כן יש עמו כזית בשר. Beit Shammai say you can't place the skin of the animal in a place where people are going to step on it, because that's the beginning of, that helps the melacha of ma'abed, which is of salting and processing the skin. That's part of the way they do it, is by stepping on it. And you cannot lift it up unless it still has a kazait of meat attached, in which case the skin would be tafel to the basar. But Beit Hillel matirin, but Beit Hillel would allow this as well. Okay, so says the Gemara, Tana, relating to our first case, going back to the elid, the shopping board. It says Tana v'shavin she'im katsav alav basar she'asur l'taltelo. So everybody agrees. There's a question whether you can carry this board in the first place or not. But if you've already used it and you've already chopped up the meat, so then everyone agrees, asur l'taltelo. Now you can't carry it anymore. Why? Because you have no need to. You have no purpose. You've already chopped up the meat. This is kind of the opposite to what we saw in a previous Mishnah. We saw in a previous Mishnah, really our first Mishnah, we saw a discussion between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel whether you can come and shecht an animal if you don't have earth to cover up the blood, right? And everybody agrees if you've already done the shechita, so you can cover up the blood. Here we're saying if you've already done that, you've already chopped up the meat, so you can't. Everybody agrees you can't carry the board anymore. You have no purpose. Okay. Amar Abaye, machloket. Before that, Rashi points out, he says, Asur l'taltelo itavid le tzorech yom tov. Right? You can't carry it now. You're not using it. There's no yom tov purpose for which you need to carry it. Amar Abaye, machloket be'eli, aval betavra garmi divrei hakol mutar. So says Abaye, our machloket is regarding this chopping board, this eli. But There's another type of board, which is a tavra garmi, which literally means a bone breaker. It's used to break the bones. Okay, this is a board which is used specifically for meat and to chop it up into regular bones. Says Rashi, right? Amiyuchedet lakatzev alea basar. It's special for meat itself. That is permitted according to both Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. So Divrei Kol Mutar Pshita. That's obvious. Why do I need Abaye to tell me that? Elitnan. It says Eli. So Maudatema. You would have thought who I did. Afilu Tavagal Minami. So it's like this. The answer is no. It's not obvious because it says Eli, and you would have thought that this, just as is machloket relating to the Eli, there's also a machloket to the Tavra Garmi, to this other chopping board. Why exactly would you have thought that? So it says Rashi, because it's not clear why you would think that, right? So Rashi says Mauda Tema. What would you have thought? He says, Hu adin, de afilu Tavra Garmi ashrei Beit Shammai. Again, we're talking about carrying the board in the first place. So says Rashi, you would have thought that it's the same din, that even this Tavra Garmi, this bone breaker, this board for meat, Beit Shammai would have said that it's asur, asur Beit Shammai. Dilma b'tauda ta'atala mamlich v'lo taval. Why? What are Beit Shammai concerned of? That after, even though it's not muktzah itself, but that after you've carried it, you're going to be mamlich, you're going to change your mind. V'lo taval, you're not going to chop up the meat. V'shtakach detalach bichdi. You have done tircha shelo letzorech. Okay, so it seems to be this was quite a heavy piece of equipment, and it's a tircha to carry it around. So Beit Shammai would have been concerned that, but you'll carry it around, and then you'll say, actually, no, I don't want to chop up the meat, and you did it for no reason. So this is how you would have thought it. We're in the third line of the Gemara, from when the Gemara starts. This is something we've seen many times as well. The fact is, since it says Eli, you would have thought it says Eli, but it also means it's Tavra Garmi. So why did it just say one and not the other? To teach you Lodiacha Kochan to Beit Hillel, to show you the extent to which Beit Hillel go to Matir. If it had said Tavra Garmi, so then you would have said, okay, for that one, which is not muktzah, Beit Hillel allow it. But for the Eli, which is normally not used for meat, Beit Hillel would say no. Once it tells me that Beit Hillel allow even this, so I know they would allow both. Okay, that's what you would have thought. That's the Havamina. But Abaye told us that's just Havamina. There's really no machloket when it comes to the Tavra Garmi. That is explanation number one. Explanation number two. Right, so Lodiacha Kochan de Beit Hillel, De'afilu davar shemelachto le'isur nami shalu, that even though the Eli, which is a kli shemelachto le'isur, they allow Kamash Malan, comes to teach you that is not the case. This is obviously where Rashi gets the idea from, that the Eli is the Kli Shemelachto Le'isur. So line of the Gemara is a little bit more difficult on Tosfot's interpretation. Okay, Ika de Amri. Alternatively, you could we have a different version of how Abaye said it. Amar Abaye lo nitzracha ela afilu tafra garmi chadati. Right, so he says, when Abaye comes and tells us that it's not just the Eli, but it's also the bone breaker, that why does he need to say that? He needs to tell me where it's a new one. It's brand new. Sometimes when it's new, you have a new piece of equipment and you don't want to get it, you don't want to use it too much, you don't want to get it messed up, something like that. So you might have thought, okay, person's going to change their mind, going to be hesitant. I'm not so sure that I want to that I want to use it, so I'm going to break it. So Kamash Malan, that is not the case. We are therefore not concerned. Okay, so what we've seen from this is that we had a Havamina to say that you might be concerned that you're going to bring this board in order to chop on it, and then the Havamina was like this: you'll change your mind, you'll say, actually, I'm not so sure, I don't want to chop up the meat, and then I've done tircha shelo letzorech. So we rejected that. We said, no, that's not the case, and everybody agrees that with this board that's just for meat and for bones, you can bring it. So now the Gemara asks a question, says, wait a minute, Beit Shammai lo chayshi lamluche, You've just said that no one is concerned that you're going to come along and change your mind. But don't we say that Beit Shammai actually are concerned in many cases that a person will change their mind? How so? Atanya, we have a Beitzah that teaches as follows. Beit Shammai omrim, ein molichin tabach v'sakin etzel be'ema, v'lo be'ema etzel tabach v'sakin. Ubeit Hillel omrim molichin ze etzel ze. Okay, so we say like this. According to Beit Shammai, we don't bring a tabach, is like a butcher, and a knife, right? We don't bring them to the animal, and vice versa. Lo be'ema etzel tabach v'sakin. You don't go out and take the animal to go to the butcher with the knife. Okay, obviously this is talking about on Yom Tov. Rashi says, "Ein molechin tabach v'sakin v'chulei." They're far away from one another. We're worried that after you've gone through the tircha of going all the way, that he's going to change his mind. Right, that's Beit Shammai. Beit Shammai say you're going to bring the knife and the butcher. You're going to come to the animal. You're going to go through all this tircha and Yom Tov to come into the shechita, and then he's going to stand there. He's going to say, "Actually, not so sure. Don't want to do it." So they are concerned that you'll change your mind. So Beit Shammai omrim ein molechin tabach v'sakin etzel be'ema v'lo be'ema etzel tabach v'sakin. Beit Hillel omrim molechin ze etzel ze. But Beit Hillel say it's fine, but Beit Shammai say no. Second case, Beit Shammai omrim ein molechin tavlin u'madoch etzel meducha v'lo meducha etzel tavlin u'madoch. Okay, if you have spices, so you have a pestle and mortar. I guess you have the pestle in one place and the mortar somewhere else. And you have the spices with half of the equipment. You don't bring one to the other on Yom Tov. Beit Shammai are concerned about that. Beit Hillel omrim molechin zetzel zeh. Beit Hillel say no, there's no problem. You can take one. You can take one to the other. So we see from all of this that Beit Shammai are concerned that a person's going to come along and change their mind. So says the Gemara, no. Hachiyashta means, can you really compare the two cases? In fact, you can't. The cases are not similar. Why not? Why not? So we say hachiyashta bishlama beima atila mluche. Okay, in the case where you have an animal, if you're going to shech the animal or not, so it makes sense. You might change your mind. Why? Damar nishbak hai be'ema kchusha umaitina be'ema achlite tishmena. When you bring the animal to the person, to the shochet, so he's going to look at it. He's going to say, actually, I'm going to leave this animal. This animal's not so good. It's a little bit shvach. It's not so. It hasn't got so much meat on. Maitina be'ema achlite tishmena. I'll bring another animal which is fatter, which has more meat. We saw this, by the way, with the birds as well, right? In the previous Mishnayot, that a person goes and designates the birds. And then he comes along on Yom Tov and he actually sees the bird, says, this doesn't have as much meat as I thought. I want a different one. So there's a concern. The person there's good reason why they may change their mind. When it comes to the spices, as well, we're worried a person is part of food and he's going to change his mind. And so I have a pot which needs all the spices. We don't really do this nowadays, but I need to go and grind my spices to make this more tasty. So he says, I'm going to leave this pot that needs a little bit more spice for after Yom Tov. I'll bring another one. I don't have to grind all the spices. It's already ready. I'll rather go and eat that. So in those cases, and that is where Beit Shammai says explicitly, we are concerned about mimlach. We're concerned a person might change their mind. But in our case, with the chopping up the meat, what are you going to say? Mimlach v'lotava. He's now going to change his mind, and he's not going to chop up the meat. The animal's already been shechted. The meat is there. Since it's already been slaughtered, the meat's there. It needs to be cut up, and therefore there is no chashash, there is no concern that he's going to change his mind. All right, so we're now at the two dots again. We're something like 8, maybe 10 lines from the bottom of the page. Beit Shammai omrim, ein notnin et ha'or. So we said, Beit Shammai said you can't put the skin where people are going to go and step on it, right? And the problem here is this. We know that shchita is allowed on Yom Tov. It's allowed for the sake of ochel nefesh. You can salt the meat and eat the meat and do whatever you need to, but the skins, that's not ochel nefesh, and you can't do anything. That's also tanning, etc. That is a melachot of me'abed, of processing those skins. That would be forbidden. So Beit Hillel allow this because they're worried that people are not going to have Simchat Yom Tov. But Beit Shammai say no. So what can be done nonetheless? Everybody agrees. Tana, v'shavin shemochin alav basar litzli. Okay, if you have part of the way that the skins are preserved, that they need to be salted. Salted. This is the malacha of me'abed. This is why, by the way, on Shabbat and Yom Tov, we wouldn't be allowed to just. There's a question about salting food. So if I have, let's say, if I have a poskim discuss, if I have a salad, maybe a vegetable salad, if I want to add salt to it. So if you're going to add salt and lemon juice and oil and all sorts of things, so adding salt to vegetables looks like it's similar to the malacha of me'abed. So you should add the oil first or the lemon juice, whatever it is, and then add the salt afterwards, then it's clear that it's not done for that purpose. But so if you have the skin and then you have the meat on top, and you salt the meat, then and the salt is going. What we're dealing with here is that the salt is then going to go onto the skin, and then it's going to be good for that. But that would still be permitted. Okay, but if you're salting in a way that you're salting for tzli, right? Shavin shemochin alav basar tzli. You can, on top of the skin, you can salt meat that's going to be roasted. So Rashi says shemochim alav. Everyone agrees. Af al pi shamelach mo'il leibud. Even though the salt works for processing the skins, that is allowed. Now litzli, says Rashi, the ein mochinato yafeh. It's not salted a lot. When you roast meat that is roasted does not actually need to be salted. Why are you salting the meat for roasting? Because of the taste. But that's just, so it's a different type of salting. It's only a little bit, and therefore that would be allowed. So shavin shemochin alav basar litzli. Amar Abaye, lo shanu ela litzli aval l'kdera lo. He says if you're salting for roasting, but not for a pot that you would cook, that not. So again, pshita, that's obvious. So here's why Abaye said it. Litzli tnan hakamashmalan dafilu litzli ke'en kdera asur. It comes to teach you the following. Since it says litzli, you might have thought if I'm salting the meat just for roasting, I can salt however much I want. Come teach you no. If it's li ke'en kdera, the salting that's needed to remove the blood for meat that you're going to cook, that's a very, very large amount. Whereas the salting that you do for the tzli is just a smaller amount. So if you're salting that large amount, that would still be forbidden. But it's only a little bit, and that's on top of the skin. That is okay. That's what would be permitted. Right, Rashi says over here, he says, Haka mashmalanda afilu letzli ke'en k'dera asur. Hai aval k'dera de kamar Abaye. Right, what Abaye said when he said you can salt the meat for the when he said that you can salt the meat for roasting, he said Hai aval k'dera de kamar Abaye. Tzli ke'en k'dera kamar כגון אדם המולך צלי יפה יפה קרוב למליחת בשר שלצורך קדרה, דלא תימא כל צלי שרי. Don't say that anything is going to be forbidden, is going to be allowed, but just a bit. Okay, so then says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan. Okay, we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the bottom. Tanu Rabbanan, ein mochin et החלבים, ואין מהפכין בהן, משום רבי יהושע אמנו שוטח ברוח על גבי יתדות. So you have these חלבים, which are fats of the animal, which are forbidden to eat. Says Rashi here, אין מוכין את החלבים ביום טוב, כדי שלא יסריחו, ואפילו נשחטה בהמה ביום טוב. Why would you salt them? You would salt them so they don't go all disgusting and start to smell, etc. But it's not for eating. So therefore, that can't be done on Yom Tov. You cannot salt these chalavim. We also said ein mapchin b'hem. We can't turn them over to sort of to air them out. However, mishum Rabbi Yoshua amur shotchan beruach al gabei yetedot. Rabbi Yoshua says you can put them on hooks and hang them up in order to air them out. So Amar Rav Matna, so that is Rabbi Yoshua. He is arguing with the Tanna Kama. Amar Rav Matna alachak Rabbi Yoshua. Ika da'amri Amar Rav Matna en alachak Rabbi Yoshua. So Rav Matna says that the first version is Rav Matna says halacha follows Rabbi Yoshua, and the second version is that halacha does not follow Rabbi Yoshua. So if we have Rav Matna coming and telling us that the halacha follows Rabbi Yoshua over Tanna Kama, I understand that. It's true. You would have thought we have Yachid and Rabim, generally speaking, halacha Rabim. So we need somebody to tell me that halacha follows him. Kamashman halacha Yachid. But the one who says that the Gemara comes and says that halacha is not like Rabbi Yoshua, why do I need that? Pshita, that's obvious. Yachid v'Rabim, halacha Rabim. Generally speaking, we have a principle of Yachid and Rabim. We follow the Rabim. So Ma'udatayma, no, here you might have thought differently. You might have thought Mistaber Tamed Rabbi Yoshua Dilo Shal Lemimna V'lo Shachid. Again, the same logic that follows Beit Hillel for many of these cases. His logic makes a lot of sense. He says, if you don't allow him to do this, you're not going to do the shechita in the first place because the chalavim are going to go get all disgusting, and therefore you won't do the shechita. You won't have simchat yom tov. But kamash malan. So therefore, the one who says that comes to teach us that that is not the case, and that would not be allowed. Okay, Ma'ishna, according to that, Ma'ishna me'ol lefi adolsan. What is the difference between what Rabbi Yoshua said, according to the one who says we don't follow, we don't paskin halacha like him, and Beit Hillel, because his reasoning was in order not to prevent you from Simchat Yom Tov, and Beit Hillel who said you can put the skin down in order that you won't step on it, where you will step on it, because if we don't allow it, then we'll prevent people from Simchat Yom Tov as well. So what's the difference between the cases? At the top of the next Amud, it says, Hatam lo muchamirta mishum dachazi lemizgale. Right, so there it's different. There, Beit Hillel allowed it because you could still sit on these heights, and therefore it's not absolutely clear that it's only allowed for the purpose of Simchat Yom Tov, right? Meaning it's not necessarily muktzah as a purpose. But here, people will come to say, why did Rabbanan allow us to hang up these skins? So they won't go all disgusting. What difference does it make? I can hang them up, I can salt them, I can do whatever I want, and therefore people will come to be mistaken. That's why we would not paskin halacha there, according to the one who says we don't follow Rabbi Yoshua. Okay, we'll stop there. A couple more lines until we get to the Mishnah, but we will pick that up next week. Bezrat Hashem.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Have a good day.
Good to see everybody.
Shabbat shalom. Bye.